a really broad area of contemporary art, and it's sometimes difficult to define with one small sentence. It's often artwork that uses technology in a creative way, so whether that's technology to produce the work or to present the work. So it can encompass things like robotics, animation, games, films, interactive artworks that utilise lots of different types of technology, so webcams and IR cameras and projectors and DVD players and computer programs. So Experimenta is Australia's leading organisation who are dedicated to both commissioning, exhibiting and touring media arts. So I guess a big role of what Experimenta does is assist in the development of projects, but also really provides an opportunity for artists working in this area to actually exhibit their work in a high calibre exhibitions. So we began as an experimental film organisation, so artists working in a very experimental way with more of a geometric screen and a lineage of cinema. People have been working with all sorts of different experimental animation techniques and that kind of thing for a long time.
I started doing animation in high school, probably about year 10. Figured out that I wanted to do animation, and you know, just for school assignments and things, I'd always try and twist it into some kind of animated film instead of handing in an essay or something. And then in my year 12 I did this giant project which then took me to media arts at RMIT, and that's where I met Van.
I think we both started off wanting to do animation and didn't really think about art or galleries or that kind of stuff. It was more making animations and making films, and then mainly because of the course, in my case at least, I ended up
they kind of opened us up to the opportunities of, you know, for showing that kind of thing as artwork in galleries.
Yeah, so hence, because I would never have thought of becoming a media artist. I mean, it didn't, as a concept, really exist in my brain until I went to study it, really.
There are established media art courses at universities now too, and a lot of it's, you know, very much a part of a fine art degree or a visual arts degree or a media or film degree is to do, I guess, something outside that linear screen space and to start to push those boundaries as well.
I think I'd actually seen some really early experimenter shows like in the mid to late 90s and quite liked them and thought, oh, that's kind of cool that you can do that.
So Experimenta Utopia now is our 4th biennial exhibition, and it stemmed, I guess, the idea of Experimenta Utopia now began around the time of the GFC, when things were a little bit hard in the world and people were feeling a little bit down and out about things. So Experimenta Utopia now looks at our drive for perfection and our desire for happiness and what that looks like today and what that looks like in contemporary society, whether that be through relationships or through jobs or through where we live, how we live our lives, how we consume, the way that things like technology or science have kind of enhanced or added to that. And so the artists from Experimenta Utopia now explore that idea from multiple perspectives. Both Australian and international artists are exploring this idea, and we've included in the show. So it gives a really good global perspective on this idea of how we could perhaps achieve this idea of a perfect world or a perfect place. So some of the works, I guess, that really unfold or present that idea of utopia or highlight the theme, I guess, are works like Van Sauer and Isabel Knowles and their work You're in My Dream. This is a work that Experimenta actually commissioned for the exhibition, and it's a fabulous work which actually allows the audience to become part of the story and part of the animation. So it's a hand-cut paper stop motion animation, and it's a choose your own adventure. The audience walks up to an installation or a small booth and they put their face inside a small face-shaped hole, and then if they wiggle a mouse they can actually see the character in the animation turn to look at them, and when the character turns they see that their own face is actually on the character. Another work that Experimenta has commissioned by Melbourne-based artist Kit Wise, and it's a work called Xanadu, and it's a really fabulous hyper-real city and landscape that he's actually put together. He's collaged it together from multiple places around the world, so imagery that he's collected on his own travels or imagery that he's actually purchased online. So often people may have a preconceived idea of what technology-based work is like, and perhaps then they feel like they can't access it or approach it. But all of the works in the exhibition, as I said, the technology aspect has been, I guess, hidden or blended into the space so that it's about that interaction with the work. And so we try and create spaces and zones where people can both interact and engage in a physical sense, but also to have times to pause.
Our traditional kind of patrons are certainly coming through the gallery, but I think it's probably tapping into a younger generation. The interactive works in particular are standout pieces.
I want to show you what I do.
I guess one of the tensions, at least for me, with any of this new technology, new media, is that, well, firstly, I think as an artist you can get really too focused on the technology, and then the kind of experience or the creative side of things can get a little bit lost. And with interactive artworks, if you make them too hard to use, then people just spend the whole time trying to work out what it does rather than experiencing it. So it's quite a difficult thing to pull off, I think.
Most of the works that are interactive in the exhibition are very easy to approach, and people get a reaction very quickly out of them and are able to play with them.
It's kind of like reading a book where you put your own self into the character, and so that's kind of like a literal way of doing that, I guess, the way that we created the interactivity. And then it being a fairy tale kind of thing, and like the characters made of paper, which is kind of, again, a sort of fairy tale book. People
are quite playful with interactive works. They're certainly not games, but they certainly have an element which feel, that it's quite a physical engagement, so you end up being quite playful with the works.
Yeah, so it's hopefully a physical and emotional
But we also really
connection.
With that one, wanted people to have a lot of fun with it as well, because we've got this screen on the outside and maybe have a friend there and kind of play acting along with the story. Maybe you can have a lot of fun doing that kind of thing.
And I don't think we completely anticipated that as much at the start. But yeah, I think there is something interesting about wanting to get that analogue look, despite it being very digital.
I mean, from what people have said to me, it's been quite successful, so
yeah,
I feel like it's working out.
People do like it. I mean, it's a pretty amazing experience when you do feel like you create something and it works. Like those moments are really incredible where, we get all excited and it's actually coming to life. And particularly, I think animation lends itself to that. Lots of kind of grunt work, and then it actually comes alive quite literally, and that's really quite amazing to watch.
It is a very experimental field of art too, because every time, even if I'm doing something that's really simple, most of the time I have to figure out a way of doing it.
I think there's something magical about creating stuff just generally. I mean, it's why, I don't know, a lot of people make art and it's hard, but it is quite magical and amazing when it works.
I think we'll just see it expand and grow, and certainly, as I mentioned before, media art is becoming much more accepted within a fairly traditional art gallery or museum context, and so I think that will also help to establish it.
And there's a lot of money going to iPhone apps and
yeah,
things like that. Like any digital media funding seems to be really, people are just throwing money at that.
And also technology is becoming so integrated into our everyday lives anyway, so I think that there'll be developments that utilise things like iPads and iPhones, and obviously we're already seeing artworks being made on these platforms.
I do wonder if there'll be more convergence of art forms in some ways. I don't know, like more stuff that's like combinations of performance and video.
Yeah,
with
that seems to be a big trend too.
With tweeting, with Twitter as well, and apps that are used in performances.
Artists are always looking for new ways to express their ideas, and people are collaborating. We're seeing lots of different crossovers between different art forms, lots of hybrid practice. Technology is now starting to be used in theatre and dance. People are exploring those crossovers as well, so I think it's watch this space and see what things evolve.
I've noticed
new experience.
People used to call it new media art, and now it's called media art as well, so that's obviously changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, there seems to be like a lot of new exciting technology, and it'll be interesting to see how people use that.